Good morning. Thanks for joining us today for the webinar, Navigating the Microsoft Licensing Minefield, something we've all had great fun with over the years. Just a reminder, if you've not been into one of our webinars before, there's no chat, but there is a Q&A, so feel free to drop your questions in there anytime. They may be answered in text as we go along or picked up at the end. But that's about it from me. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Gary, who's going to get things going.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming along this morning. Yes, we wanted to put this on because it's such a task just to get your head around what Microsoft offer and how that changes week in, week out. So previously I've worked for Capita, for Ergo, Stone, and we always had one person who just knew everything about everything when it came to Microsoft and can always find the best approach and the best way of working things to make sure that you got the best deal on your licensing, because it is not an easy thing to keep a track of. Now, currently we use an outfit called Bytes, who you're going to be introduced to shortly. They help us out. It's kind of an outsourced thing in that we use their expertise because they spend every living moment trying to keep up with this stuff, so we don't have to. And I'm going to introduce you shortly to Charlie Dunmore, who's their education specialist, and she knows all of this stuff absolutely inside out, basically so that we don't have to keep track of it all, which is great. Charlie, are you ready?
Yeah, morning. Thank you for the intro. Nice to meet you all. I'm Charlie. I come from Bytes. So I am a Microsoft licensing executive. So I focus on everything public sector related for licensing. As you can imagine, that definitely keeps me in a job with all the changes. So the plan for today is to kind of give you a bit of an overview of what the best commercials are available, what's going on in the education world, and also some, I suppose, most recent licensing changes and updates. I will share a slide deck, so I will rely on you, Gary, if that's all right, to let me know that everyone can see that okay when that comes up. Let's try that. Bear with me 2 seconds. It's not working. Is that coming through, Gary?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Okay, fab. So, like we mentioned, I've been in the education sector, since 2019. Wow. So I've worked at similar institutions like Atom. I've been in big players. I've worked with some big resellers, and I've kind of moved into a niche of Microsoft licensing, purely through demand and experience and understanding where customers need the most support. So in order to do so, there's a lot of qualifications we have to go through. And I suppose my specialised sector is the public sector element. So that covers from everything from education, government, NHS, not-for-profit. So key areas we're going to touch on today, I know I gave you a brief overview, but it's going to kind of focus more around what the overview is of education in Microsoft, what is a campus agreement, and why, as a licensing specialist, I would recommend that for establishments. Also, what the comparative options are. Just a little bit of generalized Microsoft 365 edu and any licensing changes that are coming on that are kind of going to really have an impact on your organizations. And then also some of the added value and support that you're going to get through Atom IT working in partnership with ourselves. So we will get started. One of the most important things I just want to reiterate to all of you is around education eligibility. Microsoft are subject to change this at any time during an agreement. The good thing about eligibility is once you have kind of qualified and you're in the midst of an agreement, you will remain eligible for education pricing and discounting for the term of your agreement. As soon as the end of your agreement comes up, you will be subject to eligibility changes. I don't envisage any of the customers on this call kind of being subject to that, but we're typically seeing a lot of museums, libraries losing that eligibility. So that is really important that we kind of bear that in mind. A couple of the overarching agreements that I see on a day-to-day basis kind of focus around campus agreements, MPSAs, OVSs, NCE. NCE is also formerly known as CSP, so that's quite a transactional through a lot of partners. But these 4 agreements are still very much live. They're still very much present, and there's different purposes for everything, right? And that is where it's my responsibility to work with Atom to look at what your situation is, what your licensing looks like, and where the best fit is for you guys. You know, we have MPSAs, which are very much perpetual based licensing agreements for licensing and software assurance to have either a combined mixture or kind of focusing on one area. And then you've kind of got the kind of really old school OVS or Schools 3 agreements, which kind of try and focus more around the software subscription side of things, but still kind of perpetual based licensing opposed to online services. NCE CSP is a much more present, kind of convenient way of purchasing through a portal that you don't have any minimums. You can kind of choose that billing term and frequency and commitment options. You can also do your Azure usage through there, so that can be a really nice option. But then as an alternative to the NCE, if you're going to be kind of a lot more strategic and kind of find ways that you want to start spending but saving and getting the best out of your licensing as much as possible, is more of the campus side of things. So the campus is a 3-year agreement. You can have 1-year options available, but from my perspective, you don't really see as many of the benefits as what you would if you went into a 3-year. There is a way to drop that minimum on screen from 1,000 users to 100, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more as we go on. But again, that's a little bit of a comparative option to the CSP NCE model, because you can still have your online services, your software subs, and your Azure. The only thing you can't be doing through here is any perpetual licensing, so software assurance only, for example. So we see a lot of customers still having MPSA agreements to make sure they keep that SA live on those perpetual licenses. So a campus agreement, as we've reiterated, is going to give you that access to the cloud and on-premise licensing, and it's also going to give you access to Azure monetary commitment. So you're basically going to be putting money into a piggy bank. The importance with that piggy bank is don't overcommit Azure spend, because you will lose that at the end of the 12-month period at the anniversary of your agreement, or if you're in a 1-year renewal, for example. So always just commit around 75 to 80% of what you estimate you're going to spend. Or if you're quite comfortable just putting in a real minimum spend that the contract has, then do so, and then you'll just go into monthly invoicing in arrears. We can always add kind of monthly licenses on midterm. So monthly, I've kind of abbreviated because there are a lot of SKUs which are online services that are classed as monthly commitments. The reason doing so is so that we can kind of ensure that flexibility. So obviously we know in the education industry we have new staff members coming in all the time, and we have a lot of changes going on in the organisation, so we also need to be quite flexible with that. The purchases midterm will allow you to still do so. The only thing you need to bear in mind is you can't remove licenses until anniversary or renewal points, and we always need to make sure that we're keeping at those minimums of either 1,000 or 100 users. Like we said, you can still benefit from a 3-year contract. It's really, really nice for some education organisations because that procurement and predictable budgeting side of their things is always there. You know that your prices are going to be fixed for a whole 36 months, which can be really appetising for schools, especially with budgeting being, you know, a really hot topic in our industry, and also not knowing how Microsoft could change products and pricing. So everything you lock in at the start of your agreement is still going to be the same price and available for you for the full term of either 12 months or 36 months. So it can work out really friendly for you guys from a budgeting perspective, but also from a management perspective. We've touched on the eligibility piece, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. But as you can see in the top section on the right-hand side, there's a users area. What we try and do is really make sure that we group these into 3 areas. You've got your faculty users, which are also classed as an EQU, which we'll go on to in a minute. And in a standard campus agreement, that is a minimum of 1,000. So it can seem a little bit out of reach. You can also utilise something called light users, which is an Office 365 A1 license, which is again for faculty staff, but maybe not for those frontline workers, for those, you know, head-on frontline workers that are administrators, teachers, deputies, heads, you know, the people that are really running the organisation. And we do also get student licensing, which is on top of available student use benefit licenses. So there's I try and keep the user pooling really simple, because if we think about it too much, it can get really complex, and there are loads of ways you can license people. But you know, if you ever need support in looking at those users and how we can group them effectively to get the best out of your money, your licensing, then let Atom know and we can kind of help you out with that. An EQU, how do you know somebody is actually a faculty EQU user? This is an employee or contractor, excluding students and teaching grads, that uses or accesses education platforms for the benefit of your organisation. So these are the real kind of staff members that are on the ground running the school, the education establishment. So when you're looking at that licensing, bear that in mind. It's really important, because it may mean that you don't have to license 20% of your organisation. There's so many ways that we can do it, and it's just about being smart. So to move on slightly, I'm going to cover off some extra areas that can help you out when it comes to a campus agreement. Now, some of you may be aware, some of you may not, some of you may already have a perception of a JISC and CHESS membership being something that was available to higher ed, typically kind of universities, the later on education establishments. So JISC and CHESS is actually a agreement procurement route which allows you to enter a membership. This membership will give you availability to bringing down even extra and more enhanced benefits on top of the campus agreement. So the way that it does that is it gives us a reduced EQU, so that faculty number, from 1,000 A3 or A5 licenses down to 100. So we instantly know that this comes more available to our junior schools, kind of secondary schools, our multi-academy trusts. So this straight away should be catching your eyes and going, right, how can we work smarter? The entry product for a JISC and CHESS membership, when you're utilising these benefits, is a Microsoft 365 A3 or A5 license. You instantly get access to a secondary tier level of pricing. So there's 4 tiers, and you go straight into level 2, which is level B. So it does give you extra discounting on the standard education pricing. And then as I'll go on further, there's even more discount you can gain on top of that with certain products. With this membership, you do have to go in with a 3-year agreement, and you are able to apply for an extra year at the end of the term, which will extend all of your products for another year. We do still get software assurance rights and rules which apply to staff and student home use for Microsoft Office. So again, a really nice one that students can take home with them, as well as your staff members. You still get that home right use, which is actually very, very minimal in the Microsoft industry now. They've kind of revoked that from the enterprise world. So it's quite, I'm glad that education is still getting it, because it's not something we see very much anymore. Anniversaries need to be placed 30 to 60 days before they're due. Otherwise, Microsoft will do something called a Microsoft initiated late order. So what that means is your agreement will renew as is, and it will stay that way for the next 12 months. The issue with that is obviously if you want to make product changes or quantity changes, you won't be able to do that. So the importance of getting these anniversaries on time is really, really key to also be able to make, you know, beneficiary changes for the benefit of your organization. The eligibility, again, is really important. So not only do you have to go through a application process with JISC, which can take a couple of days to do so, there is a charge to that, which can vary from around £300 plus, and that will cover you for the 3 years, and that is purely based on the number of users that you have in your organisation. Now, yes, there's a charge, and that doesn't sound appetizing, but what we're seeing is a lot of customers that are going from CSP NCE to campus, or even OVS or a Schools 3 agreement to campus. There is still a substantial cost saving even with paying that JISC and CHESS membership fee. So please don't be scared to shy away from it. On top of that eligibility, we also just need to make sure that you fit the Microsoft eligibility. So again, if you need help to just pass that and do a tick box exercise, let us know. But that membership number will be obviously written into your agreement. So it's really critical that we have that if you're under that 1,000 EQU. And then lastly, the JISC agreement is in place. So these discounts that are on screen are in place until December 2026. So I'll put those on in a minute, and you'll see just the vast opportunities you can get on top of education pricing. These can be subject to change, and the only times they will change is if we see a real vast difference in Microsoft price files. So it will be on JISC and Microsoft to kind of renegotiate these discounts to make sure that the education industry is still getting the appropriate education pricing. So we typically only see these changes to benefit you guys, not to kind of revoke that access away from you. I'm not going to like completely walk through all these discounts, but just to give you a vast overview on screen of what is available, you can kind of really see where the trending opportunities are. They're going to be around the A5 suite, security, especially those Defender products, they're massive, but also the ERP side of things. The ERP side of things has been a little bit controversial because obviously the education industry probably 2-3 years ago went through a massive change with MIS and FMS systems. I feel like Microsoft have kind of come in a little bit late on the ball on this one, because they're now trying to incentivize you guys with a 25% discount to deploy Dynamics for ERP. Now, we do see a lot of universities using CRM or ERP, but it may not be the best fit for you. It may also be an opportunity, but it's just to make you aware that these are there. We can sit there and we can say to you, you know, only A5 is available, but it's really important that we give you that discount transparency, show you all of the options available so that you can also understand what products get that enhanced discount for that 3-year term until 2026. So you can also utilize them if you need to. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the FAQ. If we need to pick it up outside of today's call, then we can look at those options available to you. We typically try and get involved with customers around their renewal processes, probably about 3 months before their renewal is due. If you do have something a little bit tighter on timelines that you're interested in, then please raise that to Gary, because we obviously will need to strike whilst the iron's hot. But yeah, that's kind of to summarize JISC and Campus, a bit of an overview of commercials, agreements, what's there. There are so many options I'm aware of, and it's not one size fits all. So please be mindful that it's not just Campus that's out there, and we can walk through different options for you. I'm not going to scream over Microsoft 365 because I know a lot of you are probably educated, you deal with this every day, but it's just to kind of give you a breakdown of what these 3 components are including. And the fact that we do have individual security and compliance bolt-ons over the top of these sectors. So say, for example, you're an establishment that just takes Office 365 and you want to enhance your internal security better, or to be able to move that across to Microsoft opposed to a different vendor, you can just add these individual components where you need them. Just bear in mind, security is quite an interesting topic because Defender for Endpoint, especially that P2 enhanced product, kind of rolls out tenant-wide unless you make changes. So it's really important that we license compliantly with this. But again, we're here as a resource to support you and make sure that you're compliant and that you've got no issues. So that's an overview. I'm not going to run through it as in massive detail because we've got plenty of content to cover. But what I did want to do is just kind of give you some real key areas for consideration. You know, if you're not currently in that Microsoft 365 world for A3, these are the benefits that you're going to get. You're going to get Windows 11, which we know is coming up in October 2025. It's going to be a massive thing for, you know, existing devices. There's going to be plenty going on. So it's going to take away that, you know, capital expenditure cost of buying Windows 11 for all of those devices across your organizations. We've got Enter ID for people, identity management. Multi-factor authentication is becoming ginormous. It's also becoming a real kind of industry standard now. So please bear that one in mind, that, you know, you're kind of there, and making sure you're compliant with that. The Windows Autopilot piece is really nice as well, because obviously, as we know, with Windows 11 coming up, there may be a requirement internally to start buying new devices. Autopilot can make this process so much easier for you from a hardware procurement perspective, because you can deploy that, make sure that it's running. As soon as those new devices come on, you use Autopilot. So once they're arrived, they're technically imaged and ready to go, and you've just got to do a few IT checks. So it takes a lot of that imaging pain away from you guys internally, a lot of people in administration time. Intune is our device management. Some of you may be using big competitors like Meraki or Lightspeed Management. There's a lot of different options out there, but just bear in mind that this is built into your A3 licensing costs. Each vendor has got their own perks and pros and cons, but just bear that in mind. It may be something that, you know, an area where you can save money on. We'll kind of speed up a little bit, but you've got apps for enterprise, which will give you all your desktop applications, and you also get that Minecraft for education piece, which is really beneficial. On top of that layer, we get A5 areas. So that includes Teams, telephony, especially with all the telephony changes coming up or have been changed recently. Power BI Pro for reporting, audio conferencing, again, that enhanced layer of security with Defender, additional enhanced layers with Enter ID for risk-based conditional access. You also get that Defender on the Office 365 areas, so that gives you the Exchange Online protection, which is really nice for schools to have. And you'll also benefit from Sentinel benefits, so that will give you an expenditure per month, which is typically on a 3,500 seat deployment. So this is a really nice product that's kind of, I would say, more aimed at multi-academy trusts, for you to kind of start managing your Defender and your security with Azure usage. But that is in addition to all your A3, so that will bolt on top when you're an A5 organization. Student use benefit will come with those two licenses, with A3 and A5. You do get a staff ratio of 1 to 40. So for every one faculty member that you have licensed with A3 or A5, will give you 40 students licensed for free, bearing in mind whatever column you go for. So whether that's that A3 column or your A5 column on the right. And this is given to you free of charge from Microsoft. One key area to bear in mind here, which you'll see down in the bottom right in the green section under Windows, is Microsoft does not give students Defender for Endpoint P2. Like we've reiterated, that Defender does, with P2, it does roll out tenant-wide. So we need to be really careful with the way that you're deploying this, making sure that you're compliantly licensed. And if you do need help on that, let us know, because there are different ways of doing it. Licensing student devices or licensing users. We can look at the way that your organization is set up, because everybody does things differently, and make sure that it's done to the most cost effective and efficient way possible. But there is so much available for students to go and get. So bear that one in mind, that we can be doing so much more for our students. And also to make sure that they are licensed compliantly and securely, because as I'm sure you're all aware, education is a massive target zone industry sector for security and cyber attacks. We find that this is enhanced massively over the last 3 years, especially since COVID. So attacks are more frequent, they're coming more targeted. So please make sure that you're secure in your environment, you're secure in your data, and this is one of the many tools out there in the industry that you can use. So I'm going to kind of move away from looking at licensing, looking at the techie stuff, and go on to the value add and support that you'll get through Atom, working with us in partnership. All of these things on screen are free of charge that we can offer you. We can offer you a data risk assessment. We can offer you a Windows in the Cloud assessment, which can look at whether Azure Virtual Desktop, whether you're there, you're ready, you can get a return on investment by utilizing that. An AI workshop, so whether you're an organization that is compliantly ready to go and deploy something like Copilot, how ready are you to get there? How compliant are you to deploy that, and making sure that you're not going to be at risk of breaches or GDPR problems? But there's also a really nice one called a CAF gap analysis. So this is a public sector focused analysis which follows the NCSC framework. And what that will do is completely review all of your security. And that isn't just the Microsoft stack, that is across your full environment, of how we can help you plug these gaps, I suppose. How can we better secure you, make sure that you're utilizing the products to the best of their needs, to make sure that you're as secure as possible. We also have a service called Fast Track, which is available for organisations 300 users plus. So again, great for probably secondary schools, multi-academy trusts. If you're going to deploy this out wide, it's a really nice service for you to use. Again, free of charge when you're a customer of Atom and Bytes. It just helps you walk through everything in your environment that's yours. It's really targeted at just your organization, making sure that you're getting the best out of your Microsoft technology. This isn't an opportunity to sell you more licenses. This is an opportunity for you to learn to use your licenses better, get support, tailored guidance, and then we don't deploy that. It's a responsibility that sits with you guys. You can make a decision to do that work internally. You can make a decision to use that work through Atom. However you then want to progress, it can also help you as an organization build out a strategy for the next 12 to 24 months on how to better deploy Microsoft. So it's a great way to get free resource from a consultative perspective on how to utilize Microsoft licensing in your tenancy better. So it's tailored to you. It works lovely across all the sectors, including private sector. We have so many education customers doing it. And that is just a part of being an Atom customer, that you will gain access to that. I will show you what workloads you can actually work on as well. So we'll move on to that shortly. Another workshop, free again, that focuses around threat protection, which is a really nice one, that focuses around Defender and security within Microsoft 365, and also how to manage that with Sentinel as well on top of that. So they're one-on-one sessions that you know are deployed to showcase the value of all the solutions. So it's also a great way to give value back into your organization with staff, IT departments, with yourselves, an extra bit of kind of learning and guidance on top of that. And that again is another workshop that's targeted with users, EQU users over 300. And then the CSAT security assessment is available to all of you, which looks at all of the security gaps, findings, gives you tailored recommendations, and it will also give you kind of that guidance and steer on co-pilot readiness. This is a Microsoft service that we gain access to, so Microsoft will lead this. It's not something we do, but it will also just give you that opportunity to look at your security and compliance strategy across your whole environment to make sure that you're utilising everything to the best you can. So just a little bit more detail on the fast track side of things. So it's a program that can only be delivered by certain partners. So this is where it's really nice working with Atom, because you'll gain access to this. You'll get remote assistance and expert guidance through a specialist partner, which will give you a dedicated fast track manager. They'll then also help you implement the Microsoft best practice and also give you that guidance on future adoption, and also help you create that roadmap internally. So you'll see on the left, these are all the products that are available at the minute for you to work on. Like we reiterated in the beginning, it's really security focused and management focused at the minute on identity, compliance, devices. So there tend to be more workloads that come in the year, so kind of probably 6 months into FY25, and we're kind of envisaging those being the Copilot, the Intune suite, the Sentinels. So there is constantly changes, there is constantly new workloads that are available. But I suppose the most important bit out of fast track for you to get guidance on is to understand that this will give you a scoping call. It will give you a personalized roadmap for your Microsoft 365 environment that's not encouraging you to buy more licenses. It's encouraging you to use them smarter, use them more efficiently, and to get that return of investment. It'll give you deployment guidance. You'll get a fast track engineer, and they'll give you reviews and that adoption guidance. So also helping you make those changes internally with behaviours, because it's all well and good throwing technology in, but if the staff at your organisation doesn't know how to use the tools, and there's no use to adopting it. So all of that is there. It's there as a hand-holding service for you to either build out your own strategy and deploy internally yourselves, or to work with Atom to, you know, actually develop those services and put them into the organisation. So that's covering off value add. We've done our commercials, we've done some licensing rulings, but I'm now going to give you some tailored updates just around the education sector, what's going on at the minute, where we're at in the industry with Microsoft, some non-education updates that will still impact you guys. So this was a change that actually came in the summer, so I'm hoping you're all already aware and on it. And this was the A1 Plus retirement. So this was applicable to any customers using education licensing. So it wasn't just the education industry. It did focus at the government industry, the not-for-profit industry. And what this means is that Microsoft retired this from August the 1st, which was a free subscription that actually included desktop applications for schools that qualified. And this was available for faculty and general staff members. What this meant was customers were actually losing desktop Office client access. So what we needed to do was look at the different options available for these users that were stuck on these licenses. So it was either revert them back to general A1 licenses, which was online version of Microsoft 365 apps for Office and Enterprise. It was either step them up for A3 or A5 licenses, or bolt on the additional add-on licenses to the Office 365 A1 free license. There's a lot of ways that you can look into this, and if you do need support and are thinking, gosh, have we got A1 Plus in our environment, we can send you a snippet of this. Obviously the slides have been recorded anyway, but there are ways that you can have a look at this, and the changes that you can make, you can update these licenses using group-based licensing or PowerShell. So there's plenty of ways to do it, but hopefully it should be something that you've all covered off. It's just something that I wanted to reiterate to you and make sure that you were educated on. There was also education storage changes this summer, which was again education tenancy applicable. Microsoft are actually removing storage allocation for SharePoint, Exchange, and OneDrive. and they were centralizing all this storage allocation into pooled storage. So this was going live for customers that were on their first renewal date or no sooner than August the 1st, 2024. So this would impact you as soon as you were coming to your first renewal or August the 1st. Now, the new storage structure was looking at giving organizations 100 terabytes of pooled storage, and then you can increase the storage with either paid for licenses or pooled storage. So the services that are actually consuming from the pooled storage is your SharePoint, the OneDrive, and your Exchange. So the Exchange is covering users' mailbox, shared mailboxes, and group mailboxes. And you'll see on the right side that there was actually public mailboxes, archive mailboxes that were actually not including that. So they're really important to take away from this. And also the A1 licenses had their OneDrive storage quota changed to 100 gig. So a lot of education establishments, we've seen that IT admins have had the flexibility and taken it upon themselves to set a lower limit for A1 users to stop them consuming so much of that pooled storage. So the next steps for understanding that and making sure that you are compliant with your storage is looking at your reports and your storage in your admin center. Now we have got some content on that, on how you can go away and take that, so we can get that across to you if you need it. We are finding that paid users are contributing to pooled storage. So the A3 licenses are contributing 50 gig per user, and the A5 licenses are contributing 100 gig per user. And student use benefits and alumni users do not contribute to this pool, but they are consuming from it. So that is one thing that's really, really important when you're reviewing that storage, is bearing in mind that they're not contributing, but they're consuming. So we need to think about making sure that, you know, we're restricting mailbox sizes, OneDrive storage, all of those things to make sure that you're getting the best from your storage, and you don't have to pay additional storage for no reason. So again, this content is going to be available for you to go away and make those changes. And if you do have questions around whether you're compliant or not, then we can work that out. We have a calculator built that we can help you with. But proactive changes are like creating policies to ensure that you're tracking this pooled storage monthly. Do you have archiving internally? Do you need to reduce that storage allocation on OneDrive or their mailboxes like we covered earlier? And do you need to delete any old SharePoint sites or Teams, or even kind of like meeting recordings that have been done internally? A lot of that was done within COVID, and a lot of it hasn't been cleared out. So just making sure that you're keeping on top of that data management is going to really help you in this area to stop you having for additional 10 terabyte storage packs being purchased, because they do come with a price and they will need to be paid. So hopefully you're aware of it. If you need any help, then let us know. We can help you look at the way to do things smarter or how to license it more efficiently. So just to summarize that, because I know that's a lot of information to digest, you'll get 100 terabytes at your tenancy level. A3 users will get 50 gigs times your number of users in your environment. A5 will get 100 gig. And then you can also buy additional 10 terabytes of storage per month. And then obviously you times that by the number of terabytes you actually need. So that is the education storage changes. I am going to run through some real generalized licensing headlines, and I'm not going to give you depth by every individual bullet point because there has been so many changes recently. But the 5 on the left are really kind of the ones that we've seen that have had an impact most recently. Now, frontline workers may not be necessary for you guys, but some of you may be utilising them. But we have had new Skype for Business server released, Office LTSC is coming, and that's going to exclude publisher, so that's a big change. We also have Exchange server coming. All of these will be 2025 editions, and Entra Suite was announced. So a lot of this was kind of preview at first, and the problem was we had a lot of customers that were making changes or creating new rulings and tweaking things in their environment when a lot of it was not generally available yet. So now the Entra Suite is here. You can see on the right hand side in the blue box what is included. So a lot of these options are here available, and you can bolt on top of your A3 or A5 users. There are ways to do it instead of buying the full license, bearing in mind some of your users will be already heavily licensed for Entra. So some of these are going down really well in the industry. We're looking at, identity management, making sure that people only have access to what they need to have access to. And again, that just helps us be compliant and manage our data a lot better. External users have had a change in definition, which is really interesting. So this is who is actually accessing your environment from outside of the organization. So from the 1st of this month, there will be a change which will now state that a contractor or agent typically doesn't work on site for the customer every working day or for more than 30 hours on average per week. So that is there. If you need it, let us know. We can ping that over, but that has been quite a big change for the external users. We had Contact Center, which was released, which again may not be relevant to you guys, but some of you that may be using Dynamics is quite a key one, and that is to kind of give you a telephony service through Dynamics. We have Microsoft Publisher, which has gone end of life, as we've covered. Defender for Endpoint P2, this is a really good one for you guys, for students, as now an add-on license. Before, they just used to give you a device license, but now we actually have a student license, which is great because we can bolt this onto your A5 users as a student use benefit kind of step up. So you're not having to pay the full additional price of Defender for Endpoint for device for staff members, which is actually covering student devices. Project Visio 2024 is coming out this year, so we're expecting to see that kind of in the next couple of months. Windows Server 2025 is here, so if you've got software subscriptions or Windows Server license with software assurance, you will gain access to this. If you haven't, and if it's of interest, then let us know. It's also going to be available as pay-as-you-go via Azure, and that will be out later this year as well. Windows 11 is coming, which you can buy as a standalone product. And we also have a license assignment in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, which will mean that from September, administrators will only be able to utilize the Microsoft 365 Admin Center to assign licenses rather than using that Entra Admin Center or the Azure Management Portal. So these are really generalized updates that are here at the present in the industry. And some of them are relevant to education tenancies, and some of you may not be using them, but it's just as a bit of an FYI for you. Now, some of you that are probably using Power BI may be aware of this change that's coming. Some of you may not. So Power BI is a great reporting tool. And we're finding that if you're deploying this tenant-wide, so buying capacity and I suppose workloads at tenant level, that you will be impacted to this change. So Microsoft Fabric has been released, and it is a superset of Power BI Premium, which is combining all the Power BI tools, Azure Analytic tools, and Azure Data Factory settings, which is going to create you a software as a service. To put that in plain English, it's the new version of Power BI Premium, and it is going to be built through Azure. At the minute, you're probably buying premium SKUs through a campus agreement, through CSP. This is going to change once those products come up for renewal. So if you're looking to deploy Power BI Premium across your tenancy and you don't currently have that, you will have to go straight to Fabric from July the 1st. So obviously that date's passed, so that is relevant to us. If you are a non kind of campus customer, which is what's relevant here, then you have until the 1st of January 2025 to renew your subscription. If it's after that date, then you need to renew it onto a Fabric subscription via Azure. And again, the same with campus customers, you will be able to renew that product up until the remaining term of your agreement. So say if you're locked into a 3-year agreement on campus and that expires in 2027, you're locked in until then and you can carry on using Power BI Premium. This doesn't actually affect Power BI Pro or Power BI Premium per user licensing. It's just that tenant-wide license that's applicable. So going to Fabric from Power BI Premium does come with a migration, and Microsoft are providing support to do so. They are allowing you access to be able to design and build and deploy that migration by gaining access to Microsoft resources like architects, account managers, and also constant resource when you're going through that deployment internally. And you will also have resource through an executive sponsor. There'll be Fabric kind of administrators that can help you do that. One important thing to bear in mind is there are certain scenarios where it's going to be relevant for you or where it may not. You may decide that, yeah, we want to have premium across the whole tenancy, or you may go, you know, this just isn't for us anymore. So there's plenty of ways to do it. You may have current SKUs on and you may have questions around what they'll look like in the Fabric world. We have plenty of resource available to be able to help you kind of convert what the Power BI Premium tenant-wide would look like in the Fabric Azure world. From a cost perspective, yes, the pricing does change slightly. I wouldn't say it's too drastic, but there is a little bit of a price change. But there is also a heap ton of additional resource that's coming with that fabric change, and that comes from that Azure world that's going to gain you extra access. So loads going on. Bear that in mind. It may be relevant to you. If it's not relevant now, make sure you're getting ready for that fabric change if that's something that your organization is going to support. This is a great one for multi-academy trusts, and I have screamed at all our education customers with it because it's great if you're centrally managing other schools and organizations. So Microsoft brought out a feature in Microsoft Entra ID and 365, which allows you to form a tenant group. And as we know, multi-academy trust, there's plenty of schools within, and it can be a great way that can allow you to govern all these cross-tenant settings, but also configuring business to business or cross-tenant synchronization. So again, there's some great benefits with that. It just helps people with their experience across tenants. So say you've got staff that work centrally at the trust, that helps them come in and out of tenants. It's also going to help the schools kind of communicating within teams across different school accounts, and also kind of help you differentiate the in-organization and the external users a lot clearer. So that's been a great feature that's been available and been announced. So another opportunity for you to deploy. I have 2 slides left, so if you do have FAQs, obviously we'll get to those shortly. But end of support for this year and next year is coming very quickly. Some of the big ones that you'll all be aware of is Windows 10. I know from working in education for years that it's not as easy as just upgrading to Windows 11. It's also doesn't mean that every device is going to be supported, but obviously being aware, trying to prepare as much as you can for this change on October the 14th next year is going to be really important for you. Another massive one is the SQL Server 2019, just making sure that you're preparing as much as possible. Should you get to October 2025 and your organization is not in a position to be able to upgrade, please let Atom know, let them support you, let them help you, whether we can give you support from extended support perspective or whether that's a kind of in-place upgrade support that they can assist you with on that journey. So bear those in mind. All the content is hyperlinked, which will take you to the Microsoft service descriptions. But I think we will move over to any FAQs you've got, any questions. So Jago, I will let you manage that if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've got one coming in. So the question is, we're approaching the renewal of a Select Plus agreement, which is under as an affiliate that the customer wasn't aware of. Is there any current alternatives to this that they would be better jumping over to?
Yeah, so it's purely dependent what you're licensing within your Select Plus agreement. Now, Select Plus and MPSA are really comparable. You may actually find that within the MPSA agreement, you'll get better education licensing and discounting. If you're licensing software assurance, that can definitely be in there. So I would say speak to your incumbent, explore another option, look at MPSA as a comparison and see whether that will give you better pricing and discounting.
Thanks for that, Charlie. So yeah, just give it another couple of minutes just for any last sort of questions to filter in. But yeah, effectively, guys, Atom IT, they can support you understanding your current agreements. If you wish to look at alternatives, whether that's from a cost saving perspective or to get more out of your agreements, then obviously please reach out to Gary and his team at Atom. We can kind of map out what the differences are between these types of agreements, what the benefits are. If it's anything that you need help with deploying the technology that you've got, cybersecurity, anything that sort of Charlie's covered in this, we'd be more than happy to take a look at and support you with. So it kind of wraps up the questions. There's nothing else filtering in now. So yeah, if you need anything, guys, please contact Gary and his team at Atom. Thanks for that, Rick.
Magic, thank you very much. I think it's always a good sign when there aren't many questions. It shows Charlie's covered everything off in its entirety. We will be sharing the recording of this on the portal, so keep your eyes peeled for that. It should be on this afternoon. And I think we're sharing the presentation, are we? Can we share the presentation? Yep. So we'll get that shared on the portal as well, and you'll receive a notification once that's live. Oh, we've just had another post question there. How does the new Fabric package work with A5 licensing, where Power BI Pro is included?
So the Fabric licensing won't affect individual user licensing. It's only if you've got Power BI Premium enabled across the tenancy. So if you have got users obviously utilizing Power BI Pro, what that's going to give them is the capability to create reports, but also to share. If they're using the premium features and functionality of a user license, again, there's no worry around the Fabric. It's only if you've got Power BI Premium deployed across the tenancy and at tenant level, which will give you storage, compute power. So if you need resource on that, let us know and we can ping it over.
Awesome. There's been a couple of other questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that Windows 11 cannot be licensed from Windows 10 on perpetual. Is that correct? If we have a Windows 10 Pro digital license, which then can the PC be upgraded to Windows 11 Pro?
So Windows 11 can be licensed. It's included within A3 and A5 licensing for users. And if we have a Windows 10 Pro digital license, which we can then can the PC be upgraded to Windows 11 Pro? So yeah, Windows 11 is able to be upgraded, especially if you're licensed with A3 or A5 users. If you're not and you need to buy perpetual licensing, that's available through either MPSA or the CSP NCE option, but they tend to be the long-term servicing channel routes. So you can utilize those suites to go to Windows 11. It'll probably take you up to Windows 11 education, but it's purely based on what your kind of OEM or the baseline Windows 10 license was licensed at.
Thank you. One more. Useful just to mention that A3 licensing will not cover students for on-premises server CALs, unlike the faculty A3. Students accessing servers other than DCs will still need on-prem licensing.
So yeah, and it's also have a look at what your students are accessing to see if you actually need those client access licenses. What we can do is send you out, if you need it, the student use benefit map, which will show you what CALs are included and what's not. And they are subject to change, so they do change quite frequently. But I think Microsoft is starting to exclude that within the years because they're finding that a lot less organizations need student access to client access services like SQL, for example. So if you need them, then they're there as an option to license. But yeah, they're not included within the suites.
Cool. Another one come in. Is it possible to leave an OVS contract early, as going with 365 A3 licenses due to an A1 plus retirement?
So what you can do is, if your current supplier won't let you leave the contract, you can actually reduce this down to 5 users. So I assume you're probably licensing with Desktop for Education. And if that is the case, you can move this right down to a quantity of 5 to pay for as least duplication as possible. And then you can obviously take on your A3 licensing elsewhere. It's purely down to your incumbent. You can ask the question, and it will also be subject to Microsoft's approval. But if you have issue with that, then you can reduce the numbers down to 5 because an OVS contract needs that as a minimum to be opened.
Awesome. That's it for now. I think people have probably had time to type the questions in if they've got them. Feel free to follow up with Gary. His contact details are on the portal in the company directory. And yeah, I think that looks about it. So thank you, Charlie. That was awesome. And Jago and Gary for joining us here today. I'll get everything shared as soon as possible on the portal. Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all.